Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so I don't want to spend too much time on this because there's a lot going on right now. There's a few things that I want to update you guys on, as well as show you a couple things just to give you a general sense of the temperature of the country right now. But something interesting that I saw, sort of an update on a previous episode that I did about Jordan Jensen, where she kind of goes on this weird rant talking with Stavros about trans people. She uses the T slur. It's kind of a mess. And a lot of people ended up talking about that, mostly from the angle of like Stavros is the cool comedian who calls other comedians out on their bullshit. Most of what resonated about that clip in the sort of like comedy commentary world is that he said, you're auditioning for Rogan, you're auditioning for Kill Tony. And so that got repeated a lot. But then also there was a lot of discourse about it on Twitter. It was a whole thing. And so I knew that probably there was going to be more on the Joe Rogan episode, but I didn't think that they were going to mention that. I figured they had maybe taped it earlier than that. So she mentions a little bit about what happened that day when she got a ton of pushback about that specific episode, kind of offers no contrition whatsoever, and basically like she like restates and reconfigures her point to be something a lot more reasonable than it was. And then Joe Rogan also responds to some criticism that he's been getting and the general Austin scene has been getting about them being the sort of like alt-right comedy scene. And so it's interesting to see both of them are kind of backing off that position. She might have thought Joe Rogan would be the place where that he's going to fully back her up. And he did back her up on that. It's not like he left her out to dry when she was telling this story about how she got piled on over that statement. But at the same time, the comedy world seems to be kind of running away from this whole thing about being alt-right, being edgy. They're not liking it anymore. You're not hearing that much from these guys about Kimmel getting pulled off the air. And a lot of them got to be scared over that. Not just scared to come out and say something, but scared in the sense that, you know, what got a lot of these people talking about cancel culture and yapping about that is that they could see themselves a little bit in the people that it happened to, whether it's Louis C.K. or somebody else who gets pulled off the air over something. A lot of times it's less the details that matter, and it's more like, well, that could happen to me over this or that or anything. And so I think now when you see the government literally lean on a company to pull somebody off the air and it happens within a day, that's pretty scary. So you see some backpedaling from these people now, and in the case of Rogan, kind of trying to distance himself from this impression of the culture that he's created in Austin. So let's listen to this real quick.
I just went through a horrible Twitter thing last night. Dude, I got dragged.
You can't read that stuff.
Dude, it was a fan hit me up and goes, don't go on Twitter. And I went on Twitter, and it was this crazy out of context thing where I was like talking, I was on Stav's podcast, and I was talking about this guy who used the word, I'm not going to say it, T-R-A, I don't know how to spell it, N-N-Y?
Okay.
He used that word. And I was being like, that word is so fucking antiquated that at this point to me, it sounds like somebody's just calling like a drag queen that. And everybody took it as me saying that trans people are in drag.
Oh, God.
And it like, dude, it was just like went at me. And like, the crazy thing is I thought I was being woke on that podcast. I had like friends of mine being like, fuck Jordan. Like, it was crazy.
Friends of yours?
Friendly people, like people I work with.
Yeah, those people can go eat shit. Those pylon people, they can all go eat shit.
But that was my like first big one. I've had one before, but that was like...
That kind of shit pushes people away from all the things you're trying to promote. Like, it doesn't mean that people hate trans people if they say something like that. That's not what you're saying. And
I was saying the opposite. I was being like, this guy was such an asshole for using that word. Also, that word is so corny that I feel like at this point it's not even reference to transgender people, that it's like what we say for drag, basically.
Some people still use it.
Totally.
But it's that's not the point. The point is, it's like, what are you trying to do? You're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. So shut the fuck up. Everybody's just looking for a reason to be offended. It's just... trying to find anything that they can, like, green light, go. It's
And
no
just
reason,
pulling it out?
no nuance. Yeah, of course.
It's so crazy.
Of course.
It was so, and I'm just like reading all of them, and I was like, this is so many people that are just like, this dumb bitch.
We were in the green room the other day, and someone had called us like some alt-right white supremacist club. I was in the room with Brian Simpson, who's black, Derek Poston, who's black, Hassan Ahmad, who's Muslim. Yeah. It was Tony Hinchcliffe, Ron White, and me. I'm like, this is a pretty diverse lineup. Like, what are we talking? This is so silly.
You're looking at comments. See, it's hard. It's hard to not look at these fucking things.
It was a video. It wasn't a comment. It was a video of someone that one of the guys was playing. It was like, look how fucking stupid this is. The idea that this, like, that you had to be, like, I'm not even a Republican. Like, I voted for Trump because I thought we were going in a terrifying direction where there was not really a president for 4 years and the same people are now going to be running the government. Like,
Weren't you like a Bernie bro?
Yes. So I've only voted Republican once in my life. The idea that you have to be a Republican to get in at that club is so ridiculous. That club is filled with gay people, black people, straight people, white people, Asian. No one gives a fuck.
Yeah, that green room is
You're just doing comedy. You're just doing comedy. Whoever you are, whatever you believe, we have tons of lively discussions.
I will say one time I was there and Jordan Peterson walked through and I was like, you can't be here. That's too on the nose.
He's here all the time.
That's crazy.
It is weird. Yeah.
That's crazy. With his daughter?
Oh, yeah. He came with his daughter. Yeah. He's been there a few times. Yeah. He even did Kill Tony.
Oh, he was on it?
Yeah. He was on Kill Tony. Yeah.
All right, so when Jordan Jensen originally said that stuff to Stav, it's a lot worse. You can go listen to the episode that I made about it, or there's plenty of other podcast episodes, but I think I posted the longest clip of what she said. But it's also right at the top of the episode that she did recently on Stavros' podcast. Go listen to it and compare that with what she just said on Rogan and ask yourself if those are the same statements. But I do see what she's saying. I think she really cleaned it up. And if she had said what she said just then on Stavros' podcast, nobody would have given a fuck. But it was the fact that she opened up at the top of the pod with this insane shit. She's dropping this T slur like 4 times, and she's talking about how the T slur is just drag, and how if you're a feminist, you have to be upset about trans people getting fake tits, and she was going off. So it's part of her brand. She does this, she just pops off, and I think there is some value in the fact that these are like half-baked thoughts that she is working out in real time, and I think that's part of why people relate to her. And other comics as well. It's like that ability to sort of formulate something in real time and not necessarily have to get it right. I do think it's important for there to be some space for that, especially among people who are entertaining to listen to speak. But at the same time, if you're coming out and dropping slurs, words that you know are slurs, somebody's telling you that it's a slur and you keep saying it, and maybe it was just that in the moment she felt frazzled and couldn't articulate her point. But again, if she had said what she said there on Rogan on Stavros' podcast, then there would have not been, maybe a tiny bit of backlash, but it definitely wouldn't have echoed the way it did. And it seems like all she would have had to say is like, maybe I didn't do a great job of explaining it, because she didn't. She did a terrible job of explaining it. And she's obviously backpedaling here. Even in that conversation, she said, I'm not a TERF, which even though she had literally just said something that TERFs say all the time, I think she would argue she meant something slightly different. But the point being, she was kind of emanating that type of rhetoric, but then immediately backpedaling from it. And that's what you see happening here too. And I do think that this is an interesting shift in the dynamic, because it's not just, oh, I'm getting all this public backlash and now the thing I have to do is say sorry. But instead, especially with Rogan here, what you see is they're running away from being associated with the things that in the past they weren't that worried about being associated with. So it's not as much about like the public backlash and, oh God, I'm getting canceled. And it's more like, oh no, I actually don't want you to think that I am that. And this anecdote that Joe Rogan gives about being surrounded by, people who aren't white in his lineup at the mothership, that's great. And I appreciate that. But Joe Rogan has been a platform to launder anti-DEI rhetoric, anti-free speech rhetoric, believe it or not, free speech of people who are trying to teach history. And what's interesting here is that Joe Rogan is saying that he's just chilling in the green room with a few other comics, and one of them is watching a video that was made about whatever, the comedy scene at the mothership, that apparently, according to Joe, says they're neo-Nazis. I would be willing to bet that that might be the Elephant Graveyard video that I did some commentary on. It was called How Joe Rogan Created an Anti-Reality Doomsday Cult in Austin. And it seems most likely that that's the video that somebody would pull up in the presence of Joe Rogan. But even if not, even if it's some other video that somebody made where he actually calls Rogan and those around him neo-Nazis, which Elephant Graveyard didn't say. He might have made some references like that, but didn't say anything like that as far as I remember. So it shows that that type of criticism and the backlash that is happening in the commentary world amongst different comedians who are now criticizing the Austin scene and Joe Rogan himself, it's starting to reach him in a way that hadn't before. And now he is saying, oh, they're calling us Nazis, they're calling us alt-right, racist, fully missing the point. And I could easily articulate to you what the general sentiment against Austin is from comedians, and I'm not even a comedian, but I've heard enough of them say that it's a vibe that the people who are performing there, especially at the mothership, but anywhere in this scene that's been created there, you have people who are just going for the punching down. They're just going for the slur joke. They're just going for the beating up or killing a gay person joke. And that's something I've heard people reference specifically, rather than actually working on like something subversive or interesting. So that is the craft that they're pursuing at this moment. And it's not all of them. But the point is that specifically at the mothership, because of Joe Rogan's approach to comedy, he has opened space for people who are really just trying to work out bigoted ideas, not trying to work out funny ideas. And that has begun to characterize the entire scene that he's created. That would be the critique. Not saying everybody feels that way, but if I had to articulate it based on what I've heard, that's what I would say. And the thing about that is Joe's not going to be able to run away from that because he's not going to meaningfully change the vibe. He's not actually interested in creating something that doesn't feel like that. And as you can see from what he had to say about it here, he's kind of blind to that vibe. And he doesn't see that the environment that you've created is something that's kind of like inherently discriminatory in the type of rhetoric that you've allowed to be spewed on stage without question. And curated an audience that is primed to hear that type of content without pushing back. And so if you're correcting now by having, less white people in the lineup, that's great. That's a good starting point. But if you really don't want to be associated with what you've come to associate yourself with, you're actually going to have to create an environment where the content is less hateful. You're just going to have to acknowledge that problem at some point. But probably not. He probably won't ever be able to see that. So anyway, quickly just to go over some things that are happening with ICE and how that ties in with the free speech conversation. So there have been increasing amounts of unrest because of ICE operations in Chicago and Illinois. ICE agents that were gathering in this neighborhood sort of nearby Chicago, but not in Chicago. And there were protesters that showed up. There were confrontations where the protesters were trying to prevent vehicles and from getting into their vehicles. Things like sitting down, peaceful protests is what was happening, and the soldiers violently attacked them. One of them was a person running for Senate in Illinois, Kat Abugazela. She's been running a great campaign, and this has happened a couple times actually, that she's been assaulted by ICE agents for being at these type of protests. And so increasingly we are seeing them not be afraid to put their hands on people and be violent. They're getting those orders now, and it seems like Trump is trying to ramp up his attempt to aggressively invade these cities with different law enforcement. And in the case of Los Angeles, a surge in ICE agents present there doing raids and going into certain neighborhoods and stuff like that is what sparked the unrest that led to Trump wanting to bring the National Guard in. That led to a lot of confrontations and was ultimately found to be illegal by the courts, which I believe is where that stands at the moment. And the conversation moved away from there. So this is going to happen on multiple fronts across the country. New York, California, Chicago, other cities like Washington, D.C. We're going to continue to see how different cities are responding to this, both on a grassroots and governmental level. And I think that's really going to shape the dynamic of the country going forward. And you also have this TikTok deal that has not gone through with Trump and China yet. They're talking about this structure where essentially a bunch of tech CEOs, people like Larry Ellison, the owner of Oracle, and Mark Andreessen, for fuck's sake, are going to essentially take over the US operations of TikTok. And so there's a lot of talk about these new terms of service that have been instituted. That seems like something that is a precursor to this deal being done, and not something that is because the deal has already gone through. So I'm not sure if there's some confusion about that, but it looks like the people who are going to be owning TikTok going forward are going to be people very close to Trump, people that are very pro-Trump like Larry Ellison, and also very pro-Zionist, and they are already changing their policies in a way that allows them to pull anti-Zionist content off of the For You page and off TikTok in general, and that is happening to a lot of content creators. So this is just one aspect of how they're going to clamp down on the free speech in this nation, to not only censor criticism of Israel, but also criticism of the president, criticism of Charlie Kirk, criticism of ICE, videos like the ones that I showed you of Kat Abugazela being slammed on the ground. That's the kind of thing that they're going to try to suppress more and more. And as they suppress the certain mainstream outlets, there's going to be opportunities in other places, but we've got to be able to move fast to find the places that are easiest to reach people under the repression of the state, as well as using whatever forces we can on the ground to push back specifically against the ICE raids that are violating these neighborhoods, going in, stealing people who are important parts of the community, and removing them, and in some cases disappearing them. That is the most important thing to push back on and let the federal government know that they can't do it without a response from the community.